The first one is from Christine Anderson. So Christine was asking about the evaluators and how they are identified or chosen. And I think that Magda did clarify this during her presentation. But perhaps, Magda, you may want to repeat a few points for everyone.
Yes. So the experts for our evaluation typically come from the database of the European Commission database of experts. Depending on the field, the research field that's covered by the call, we of course choose them based on that expertise. Sometimes we need to cover several areas of expertise, so we try to find an expert as relevant as possible. It is also possible for us to find experts outside of the database, but then eventually they need to register anyhow, because to be able to be an expert, to sign a contract and so on, they do have to be registered in the database.
Okay, thank you, Magda. And then another question, always by Christine, asking if only one short proposal is chosen, what is the purpose of the second evaluation? Do proposals ever fail at the second stage of evaluation?
So as I mentioned, we choose only one short proposal because we have only one team from industry. So it is not possible for them to really work together in parallel with 2 or 3 different teams to elaborate full proposal. The evaluation in second stage is a very important one. As you can imagine, short proposal, first of all, is very short. It doesn't cover a lot of detail, and plus it doesn't cover the full consortium. At second stage, it is very important to evaluate the contributions from all the different partners. So we have new partners coming, the industrial partners. They contribute in kind, and their contributions have to be well elaborated. They have to be complementary. They have to be well integrated within the proposal. And also, the full proposal includes much more details compared to short proposal. There is much more detail on each work package, the project plan, the deliverables, the tasks, milestones, who is contributing to all of these activities. Also details on governance of the project, on the management of the project. These are all very important aspects. So in the second stage, there is no competition. There's only one proposal, but it's very much focused on the details of implementation. It has happened in the past, both in IMI1 and IMI2, that the full proposal was not chosen for funding. It is very important for us that the full proposal is of high quality, because our proposals are usually of significant budget, so it has to be made sure that those proposals are of high quality with high probability of success and impact. Therefore, the evaluation at stage 2 with using independent expert panel.
Thank you, Magda. And yes, Kristen, as you were asking, proposers can contact both the IMI program office directly and national contact points, state representative group members. So it depends a little bit. For any information on the application process or on the topics, for clarification, for example, you can contact the IMI program office. But if you want to get in touch with your local or national state representative group or national contact points for more information, for example, about other potential proposers, you can also get in touch with them. There's now a question by Gergely asking, so they have heard from a Canadian colleague that Canada has signed a bilateral agreement with the EU to take part in research grants. In this sense, are Canadian scientists eligible to take part in an IMI2 consortium and receive funding as such?
So, to our knowledge, there is no bilateral agreement applicable to IMI2 GU so far, so making third countries eligible to IMI2 calls. We can verify, I mean, if this bilateral agreement also applied to the IMI2 call. So I suggest in case you have a contact with these Canadian colleagues, of yours can contact the IMI office and provide us with the documentation to verify if this is indeed applicable to IMI2 calls. You have to make attention that there are some agreements that only apply to the European Commission calls and not to the IMI2GU. And in any case, we are ready to investigate, explore if this bilateral agreement is applicable to the IMI2. So far, we are not aware.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Another question by Thomas Knowles, asking if it is possible to reserve money in the budget for flexible spending on subcontractors, depending on requirements originating from obtained results within the project.
So this is, I would say this is it's a wider question. I mean, I think you should allocate this funding to a specific activity. You don't need to identify who will use. I mean, you don't need to identify the subcontractor. You may. But the funding should be associated to a specific activity, which then you may identify which will be the subcontractor later on in the project, provided this is still needed. But the funding should always be associated to a specific activity. And I would like to go back to the first question in relation to the Canadian. I mean, it's not the Canadian cannot participate. They can do participate, but always. But then not necessarily they will be eligible for funding. So your bilateral agreement, it depends, it's based on the bilateral agreement, will be eligible for funding because there is no question. I mean, they can participate. The point is, if they are Canadian and there is no bilateral agreement, they can participate but with no funding.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Now, a question brought up by Anna Picto on the coordination of the project. So perhaps my colleagues can help us make the point again there.
Okay, so the coordinator as such of the short proposal and then full proposal and the IMI project eventually is the lead academic or lead organization from the beneficiaries receiving IMI funding. As Fabrizio has mentioned, in the spirit of IMI and the public-private partnership collaborative setup, once the full proposal is elaborated, there is really a co-leadership system. So you have the main coordination or leadership of the project done by the coordinator, which is the leading beneficiary, together with the project leader, which comes from leading industry partner. And then also we expect really co-leadership of public and private representatives on work packages. So we often have co-leaders of work packages from both public and private sides. And of course, we also, in terms of contributions to the different work packages, to the different tasks, as appropriate as the as available resources or expertise, but it's always mixed. It's always real collaboration. So this is very much emphasized, and this is also something that is being evaluated as part of full proposal evaluation.
Thank you, Magda. A question by Christoph asking if it's possible to extend the consortium membership in the second stage of the proposal development.
So yes, this is possible, but this has to be justified. If, for example, it turns out that some key expertise is missing, and you need it to fulfill the objectives of the call topic, this is possible. Sometimes it happens on the public side, sometimes it happens on the private side. So there might be new companies joining or new associated partners. But whenever such change is made, it has to be well justified in the full proposal, and this is then evaluated by the expert panel at the second stage.
Thank you, Magda. Another question by Gergely: if all project partners and members institution of the planned consortium, if they all should obtain an EU login PIC number, or only those which will be receiving the funding?
So the EU login to access and decode the application is definitely for the coordinator. While all beneficiaries, either receiving or not receiving funding, they must be registered and have a PIC number. And therefore, once you register, we will get an EU access as well. So the key point is that who is encoding, drafting the proposal in the system must have this login, and all legal entity participating must be registered in the participant portal and have obtained a PIC number. And such a PIC number must be validated before the IMI will be able to sign the grant agreement. So for any organization which is not yet registered or is not yet validated at the time of submission, in order to submit the proposal, they must be at least registered, and in order to be able to participate, so in order for the grant agreement to be signed, they must also be validated. So in case you have a first registration, please follow up, because if you don't conclude positively the validation, we won't be able to sign the grant agreement, and this won't only affect the relevant organization, but will also affect the entire consortium, because the full grant agreement won't be signed on the IMI side.
Thank you, Fabrizio. So it looks like we've come to the bottom of all the questions received. Perhaps as we wait to see if any final question comes up, let me remind you that the presentation for the rules and procedures webinar will be online on the webinar webpage of the IMI website. There will also be a recording of one of the two rules and procedures webinars that we held. So we had one on Monday and one today. Both questions and answer sessions will be recorded and online. For any questions you may have, you can always contact the IMI program office by email using the email address infodesk@imi.europa.eu. Please refrain from contacting the FPR topic writers for specific topic information. And if you need, also always think about picking up the phone and just calling the IMI program office. We're also always very happy to answer any questions on the phone. There's just a question coming in from Jason Cannon now online. And it's about EU and US co-funding. So I'll read the question for everyone. The European Commission and the US government signed an agreement in December to implement an arrangement between the EU and US government for cooperation between researchers funded separately by the European Union and the US framework programs on research and innovation. Thus, it states that US institutions not receiving funds under the EU framework programs for research and innovation, currently Horizon 2020, may conduct cooperative research and relevant activities with EU participants, irrespective of the nature and extent of their contributions, without being a participant, and are not required to sign grant or consortia agreements under these programs or other forums that are required for EU participants. Does this also apply to IMI2?
Yes, it does, but this is concerned, so they are not required to sign the grant agreement if they are not receiving funding, IMI funding. So this is applied, so the idea was this agreement addressed the issue that in some cases US organizations were required to sign the grant agreement and therefore to agree with all the provision of the grant agreement despite they were not receiving any funding. And then there were some blocking issues for them to accept the jurisdiction, IP provision, etc., which prevented them from signing the grant agreement despite they were just willing to contribute and not receiving any funding. So this agreement, bilateral agreement with the European Commission, the US government, is to address this point, is therefore applicable to IMI2GU as well, but it's important to understand that it's not for US organizations which are applying to IMI call for funding, but only carrying out activities without being reimbursed.
Thank you, Fabrizio. And I think we also have another final question from Gergely, asking what results fall under the results that need to be made publicly available according to the code text as covered by Work Package 8.
We don't know which topic this refers to.
Yeah, Gergely, perhaps you may want to specify which topic of the call you're referring to, because we have 8 topics and each one is different. the solute carrier gene topic?
I suggest for you to actually email InfoDesk about this one, because none of us is following this particular topic, and it would be best to put you in touch with the scientific officers who follows this topic. They will be able to give you more information.
Yeah, that's correct. Gabriele, so use infodesk@imi.europa.eu, which is the email address indicated in the slides, and then we'll transfer your email to our scientific officer in charge of this topic. So as I see that we have no other questions coming in, I would like to thank Magda and Fabrizio for taking the time to explain all the rules and procedures for IMI2 calls for proposals once again to all of you. Thank you all for participating, and we wish you all the best for any possible application you may send in. Thank you very much again, and goodbye.